Seconds.
All right, so it's 6 o'clock and we're recording now, so we'll go ahead and start. My name's Alan Long, Ward 4 Representative, Position 2.
My name is John Latour, Ward 4, Division 1. Was elected by the good folks of Ward 4, but I serve everyone in Fayetteville because my vote, along with Alan's, can potentially impact every life in town.
Amen.
So I'm glad to hear from everybody.
All right, usually we start by going off with a round of introductions all the way around the room, but tonight we have a really big crowd and we do have a limited time frame and several things on the agenda, so I think we'll just jump right into it tonight. We have Louise Mann here to talk about waste reduction. We have representatives from Lindsay and Ron Cavanis here to talk about the Razorback Golf Course rezoning potential. And we also have Tom and Mr. Arcega here to talk about, I'm not sure if you're here to talk about it, but to answer questions about the special event ordinance that Alderman Marsh has proposed. So if you have any questions, we'll just wait till the end of everyone's talk. I know Louise is on a short time frame, so Louise, we'll go ahead and turn it over to you. And
I don't want to have my back to the camera. Where is it?
His camera's right back there.
I'm
Where it
going to
says
sit here
report.
because sadly, y'all just going to read this so I stay on course here. As someone who has 27 years in the waste minimization and recycling business, I am very concerned about the direction that Fayetteville is taking. Twice in 20 years, we taxpayers have paid for the collection of materials for which there is no market. The first time was the single-string mess collected at the curb back in the 90s. Y'all may remember that. That was our first curbside program. City staff did not have time to attend a meeting I put together. I worked at the Solid Waste District way back then. I brought in folks from around the country, from North Carolina, and as a matter of fact, the guy that started the recycling program in Durham. But our staff was too busy meeting with one of the major hauling companies. So we have to ask, how do haulers make their money? Haulers make their money when there's a volume to haul. If we got real serious about waste reduction, the hauling industry would lose money. The second time we taxpayers picked up the tab to collect non-marketable materials was during the last mayoral race. The staff collected the 1 through 7 plastics down at the 15th Street drop-off center. They did that before they had secured 2 domestic markets, stable markets. Interesting, the collection halted after that election. We were told that the city had learned a lesson that you've got to secure 2 domestic markets before you start collecting an item. Are we hiring people who lack the experience to make good decisions? Is it a coincidence that the single-string pilot is happening in the neighborhood of an alderman who is running for re-election? I'm very concerned about the lack of conversation and information getting out to the public on this issue. We had to ask to have the single-string pilot vote moved from the consent agenda in order for the public to be able to ask questions. And they did. The discussion went on for 2 hours, and during that 2 hours it was discovered that city staff had been working with Walmart on packaging issues. More on that in a minute. We also found out that Harmon Recycling, the company doing the pilot, was a subsidiary of Georgia Pacific. If you don't know who owns Georgia Pacific, I encourage you to Google that. This was all news to our aldermen. We've been told over and again how important single stream is to capture recycling in the apartment complexes. Months ago, when I asked for a map of the pilot area, it turned out to be all single-family houses. There weren't any apartments on that map. Just recently, staff announced the 2 apartment complexes that will be involved in the single-string pilot. At the agenda session last week, and the agenda session is a meeting in which citizens are not allowed to ask questions, only the alderman. But during that meeting, thanks to our alderman, we found out that the apartment pilot is only going to last 50 days. We've been told over and over how this pilot on single string was going to be a 90-day program. So it started in the residential area with the houses. That's going to be 90 days, but the pilot for the apartments is only going to be 50. This makes no sense if the apartments were the main reason for exploring single stream in the first place. These items collected in recycling are resources. Right now we keep them segregated and they're marketable with our curb sort program. When markets go south, and they have, markets are poor now, you better have clean materials if you can hope to find a buyer. Currently, our workers leave materials in the bin for which we don't have a market. If you've got a good education program, when citizens come home and find something in the bin, they'll feel proud of their honest program because they'll understand why that got left in the bin. If citizens are angry about stuff being left in the bin, then you don't have a good education program. There is no way that Single Stream can compete in terms of providing remanufacturers with clean, curb-sorted materials. We could institute a very heavy-duty policing system with big fines so that people put the right things in the single-stream bin. But even when you do that, there is still contamination. Liquids drip, thus containers stick to paper and other containers. Glass breaks into microscopic pieces, causing equipment damage in paper and plastic facilities. Is the apartment pilot only 50 days, and the staff knows that controlling contamination is going to be even harder in apartment complexes with students than with single-family dwellings? And about that Walmart packaging project, through questions asked by the alderman at the agenda session, we found out last week that our staff has been working with Walmart for a year and a half. I don't think either our alderman knew that, and I think if they've been working for a year and a half, that's a rather significant project. And we'd like some more information on that project. And we'd like information on how that relates to switching to single-stream recycling. Those who push single-stream will tell you how all the progressive cities are doing it, so it must be great. You need to ask those folks how much homework they've done on this subject in the past year, because a lot of new information has come out. You know how those cheap and convenient housing mortgages turned out to be not such a great thing? You know how those cheap and convenient student loans turned out to be not such a great thing? And how about those cheap water pipes up in Flint, Michigan and around the country? Someone usually pays a price when things are cheap and convenient. There is a lot more to this single-stream recycling than citizens, staff, and aldermen, no offense, even realize. I know because I've been studying it for the past several years and talking with people all over the country. People who are in the trenches getting their hands dirty. I want to encourage everyone in this room to ask their friends who live in other wards to start asking questions of their alderman. And the very first question you need to ask is, are you doing any homework on your own about single stream? I am paid to run half-page ads in the free weekly. My website's listed there. If you would like to be added to the weekly educational email list, you can contact me at the website. I'll be sharing news from all around the nation regarding single stream. I am passionate about trash because I've been part of one of the cleanest, most successful small town programs in the nation. Here's the difference. The difference in that program and what recycling has devolved to, and if you don't know what I mean, pick up the free weekly. There's a cartoon that runs the whole page explaining the devolution of recycling. The difference in where we started all those years ago was education. Nowadays, it's just about moving materials around. I hope my thoughts will motivate you to call your friends in other wards and jumpstart some real conversation about faux recycling.
Louise lives in Ward 4 in University Heights and runs Waste Production Resources, and has to leave pretty soon to go to another event, but wanted to come tonight and help educate us and start a discussion.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Louise.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
I'll see you.
My first appointment with Louise Mann, she walked in and said to me, "Let's talk trash." She's a good talker.
Thank you.
And she brings some very good points up. We've got to get educated. We've got to educate our citizens. I'm in favor of citizen education. I am vehemently against citizen manipulation or citizen coercion. Any recycle plan that involves coercion and manipulation, I will be voting against. Some members of our city council have set as a goal that we reach an 80% diversion rate in our city. 80%. Well, that's laudable, I agree. But there's not a place on the planet reaching 80% without cooking the books. And I asked two members of our Water and Sewer Committee, who's also over waste management, waste and recycling. They wanted me to vote yes on single-stream recycling. I asked them, would you assure me, give me your personal assurance that you will not employ coercion or manipulation to achieve 80% in recycling diversion rates. They would not do it. That tells you, gives you a pretty good idea of what they have in mind for our city. So if you're like me, if you don't like to be coerced or manipulated, contact your alderman or your alderwomen, wherever you are. Tell them, please educate me, persuade me all you want, stick every flyer you want to in my water bill, but don't coerce me and don't manipulate me. Nobody likes that. That's my piece on recycling.
So where this discussion started was the city has hired Kessler Consulting to study our waste stream, the entire waste stream, and evaluate the best method of collection as a whole, because right now we have a large gap in our recycling revenue. And recycling, many people know, most people know, is just another type of economics. It is, you know, you have a buyer buying commodities and things that go into the recycling bin save our city money, basically, in the long run. So what we're looking at here is studying the true impact. Kessler is most likely going to recommend some sort of single stream or hybrid program with the apartments because that's the biggest untapped area. They've also recommended a food waste program for the city of Fayetteville so that people can recycle that. These are things that will be coming up very soon in the city of Fayetteville. We should have the results, I would think, within the next couple months. So stay tuned for that. I would appreciate people asking questions and being involved, because there's a rate study that will be going along with that too at the very end. So we don't want our rates to go up, and we want our recycling program to be real at the same time, and make sure that what we put in our bins, our recycling bins, is actually recycled and our commodities are paid for in the city. So that's one thing that helps drive our costs down in our trash collection.
Alan, why don't you tell the people what we paid for that study?
Over $200,000.
Absolutely. Over $200,000. A lot of money for a study. I question the wisdom of that. And Kessler has an incentive to come out with some sort of Tony recycling program. They go around the country selling these ideas. So if nobody buys them, their track record looks bad. So they're gonna push, of course, this new idea. That's what Louise Mann is speaking against.
It's kind of an old idea, the single stream collection method. That, actually, a lot of cities in the United States are actually moving away from, because they have discovered that it's a very cost-inefficient system, and that the items that they put in the recycling bins don't actually get recycled, and there's more contamination, so more actually gets thrown away, which raises the cost for your trash rates in the city. So Fayetteville will probably end up eventually with some sort of hybrid system, because apartments don't have the same ability to have bins at every apartment, because we don't have the staff resources to go to every one. But I definitely wouldn't support going to a full single stream collection method. But there's more discussion on that to come. Just wanted to tonight give a chance for someone to voice their opinion and start asking questions so that people have a chance to start thinking about it as well. So, any questions on that? Okay. We have representatives from Razorback Golf Course here, and also representatives from Crystal Springs Homeowners Association and their representative here. If y'all would like to come talk about this, Ron's representatives, if y'all would like to talk about Razorback Golf Course rezoning a little bit.
Steal this turn, scoot over here. Hi everybody, I'm Ron Cavness. Thank you for inviting us. Obviously we've had a lot of debate about what to do with the rezoning of the golf course. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, that I've had this golf course for 12 years. I've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and a lot of money into it to try to make it work, because I believed in it, and I was hoping that we could make it work. But due to the decline in the golf industry and lack of play, there's no other option to keep it open anymore. When the Lindsay Group, we had it on the market for about 2 years, and the Lindsay Group approached me and made an offer on it. That was my way out, basically, at the time. And I still believe it is. I think they've come up with a good plan, and I hope that we can all see our way to make it work, because I think it is a very viable plan. You want to talk about the
Sure.
State your name.
I'm Kim Fugit. I'm representing the Lindsay Company, and we're just here really to answer any questions or I think that, you know, a lot of it's been said in the meetings that we've had over the past few months, and I guess one thing that I might mention is that I know at the last meeting, at the last city council meeting, there was some disagreements, I guess you'd say, in some of the statistics that were provided with, you know, traffic and crime and some of those issues, flooding, ability to build in floodplains and that type of thing. And what we would suggest is that the city has good staff, engineering staff that understands all of those issues about traffic and crime and the flooding issues there on Clabber, and that we would ask their opinion, city staff opinion, the engineer to provide his recommendations or statistics, and then that way we could all kind of have a benchmark or a certain set of unbiased, you know, response to those type of questions.
Is he here?
I don't believe so, no. City engineer?
Chris?
No, Chris isn't here, but if you have questions, I can write them down and definitely get
Well,
them.
I didn't have any. I just know that at the last meeting, you know, we had both sides pretty much gave presentations regarding the traffic counts and the flooding issues. You know, what was the best way to handle those, or if the north end of the property could in fact be developed because of the floodplain issues. There were some crime statistics, some of those statistics I think that came into question as to the validity of those and how that they were arrived at. And so my suggestion is that if city staff were to look at those issues and come up with their traffic counts or flooding recommendations, whatever it is, then that kind of takes the bias that the two sides may have, or the council may perceive as those biases, and look to the city for their statistics and statistical analysis of that. We'd be good with that. We feel comfortable with what staff and what the city engineers would come up with would be valid.
Okay, I can ask that question.
And also, I want to make everybody aware, I know y'all are aware of it, but we had Blue and Associates go and mark corner, I think it was just the corners, right, where the proposed apartments are going to be. And I'd invite everybody to go out and look at it and see exactly where that location is. And try to notice while you're there that it's back on the very south end of the property next to the trailer park and the existing duplexes. I just wanted to throw that out there too, so everybody's aware of it.
That's one thing, you know, when we're looking at a rezoning, we can't actually consider the development itself unless
Right.
it's a PZD. So, I mean, that's probably helpful for the constituents in the room, but as far as what we're able to look at, it's just,
Right.
is that the best use for the land?
Okay.
One issue that came up, issue that came up was the ability to develop the north end of the property, north of Clabber Creek, because there is so much of that in the floodplain. And there's a distinction that needs to be made, I think, between floodway and floodplain. A floodway is an area that has been demarked by Corps of Engineers as an area that is a flood channel, basically, where nothing can be built in that. A floodplain can be built in if the elevation of the ground is raised to an elevation above floodplain elevation. Typically, if it's raised 2 feet above floodplain elevation, it can be built there. Sam's Club, I think, is a great example of it. A portion of Sam's Club building right now was originally in the floodplain. It was built out of the floodplain. And so I think that that's something that the neighbors to the north may want to, they just need to know that. I'll just put it that way, that buildings can be built in floodplains.
Yeah, I think a lot of the neighborhoods that are directly to the west and north and partially on the south of the area are, well, not south so much, but the west and north are built-in floodplains, or what used to be floodplains.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just going to open it up for questions. I know that there are probably a lot in the room. So if y'all have any questions, this is a good opportunity just for open discussion. Wendell?
My concern is you put the apartments on the south end against the duplexes which are on Raven Road, correct? Big front, Raven Road.
So the duplexes are on Dean Solomon. Well,
Those there, okay.
yeah,
Okay.
it's in the southeast corner.
Okay. What is the possibility, is it still on the books, for making Raven and Woodlark through streets? I live in the Birdhaven subdivision, which for 30 years has been dead end. If you're coming through there, it's gotta be you're going to see someone. If you put that many apartments that close, there's gotta be another outlet. And I do not want to see them, no one in the neighborhood wants to see Raven nor Woodlark become through streets.
Okay. I think that's, and of course, Mr. Long alluded to this earlier, that we're really not talking about plans at this point, and about how traffic would go there, but as far as the apartment development is concerned, our two exit points or access points would be on Dean Solomon. One there on the south end.
E50 Mill Drive?
Immel, that's right, would be Immel, and then the other would be the current location of the existing entrance there. Those would be the two ways there. Now, I will say this, the property to the west of Razorback, there's about a 40-acre tract there that Mr. Davis owns, that I know that they have ambitions to develop that in single family, at which time, you know, those issues may be addressed, or that may be more of a concern to you as to how that property to the west develops in terms of connectivity to those roads. And I'm really not sure how that happens. I'm not sure if it's possible. If that's on the master street plan, we really haven't studied that.
Well, I mean, I'm concerned that if you're putting those apartments on the southeast corner, I can walk to the end of Raven and see the golf course 10 feet away. That's going to become an outlet.
I know that
Some way or another, the apartment people are going to use that as an outlet.
I know that during the rezoning process, we don't get into the actual streets themselves, but when someone does apply for a development, that the fire marshal has, not the fire marshal, the fire chief, I'm sorry, has a say on whether or not there are enough outlets over a certain number of residences that are built, multifamily or single family, when they actually do a plat. So that would be something that they would have to evaluate to tell if, you know, if this were approved, the rezoning, to tell if another outlet was required. So.
Okay.
Can we back up a little bit and refresh my mind on
Sure.
what is the issue that will be before the city council?
Well, currently, the Razorback, you know where the Razorback golf course is?
I know the golf course. I drive past it fairly often.
It's on its second reading tomorrow night. The proposed rezoning is for a portion of the land to be rezoned RMF 24, residential multifamily 24, a portion of it to be rezoned, that new form-based zoning code, not new, but yeah, neighborhood services and community services, and then a portion of it to residential agriculture as a buffer zone.
Okay.
And I believe some RSF4 is currently, I don't have the map with me, it's a rather large map.
There's no RSF.
There's
No,
no
on the proposal.
RSF4 on the proposal, that went to the planning commission the first time, right, okay, so that's currently what is being requested.
There are two seats up front. You're not a Baptist.
Other questions about it?
I have a question, Alderman. Mr. Cavas, can you tell us how many other offers you received for this property besides Lindsay Management?
I have not received any other offer.
How long have you had it in the market?
2 years.
2 years. Thank you. Philip?
What has specifically been thought through as far as the traffic flow out of the development? Because I know Rupel Road is barely 2 lanes. So I mean, I understand that it's just a zoning issue right now, but has there been discussions over what we're going to do to the road to...
On Dean Solomon or?
Dean
Solomon, yeah.
Solomon.
Well, there again, you know, this being rezoning, we really wouldn't get into improvements. However, typically, the majority of streets in Fayetteville are built when development takes place.
Right.
The developer of Razorback Park, the portion against Dean Solomon, typically the developer that develops the land adjacent to that street does what's called half-street improvements, which means he pays for his half of the street to whatever standard that the city master street plan has on its in its plans at that point. So in this case, if this application were to be approved, whenever the NS and NC properties developed, that is when the improvements to Dean Solomon would take place.
If this were fully developed according to the requested change in zoning, how many residential units would there be, and how many business units would there be?
Well, right now, they've just requested a rezoning. I think that, from the outside perspective, looking at Lindsay Management being the co-applicant almost in a way, I think it stands to reason that Lindsay tends to build apartments, and I don't know that Lindsay builds single-family homes.
We don't. We haven't in the past. Mr. Lindsay did years ago, but not recently. I think the NS zone, neighborhood services, can kind of throw some misconceptions out about that. The NS zone is really a single-family dwelling zone. Now, it does allow for businesses, it allows for duplexes, it allows for triplexes, but typically it's still a single-family dwelling-based zone. So I think a way to look at this is it doesn't require businesses to be there, it allows businesses to be there. So I think the answer to your question is really more market-driven than it is zoning-driven, if you will. That, really the entire NC and NS areas that we're requesting to be single-family could very well be, well, not very well be, but they could be 1-acre lots. The NS and NC zone doesn't say they have to be 10 acres per unit, or they have to be 40-foot wide lots, or they have to be businesses. It says that's what's allowed. So I think the reality of it is that the marketplace will determine what kind of homes are really built in there. Are they 70-foot wide lots? Are they 80-foot wide lots? Are they typical? And it may be very well be a mix of that. And I think that's probably what planning commission and planning staff would have envisioned, is that there'd be a mix of 80-foot lots, 50-foot lots, a little bit of sprinkling of businesses in there, and that type of thing. But I don't think anyone really can predict that or project what will actually happen.
Well, I get the feeling that some of the folks who live in that area are concerned largely about traffic.
Mm-hmm.
And a question that relates to traffic is, worst case scenario, how many people would we be adding under the requested zoning? If buildings with maximum capacity permitted were built, how many people would that translate to?
Okay, well, and I'll offer a comment, just a contrasting, a little bit comment to what you offered, Kim. Neighborhood services, community services, not that this is community services, but that is a zoning code that's one of the form-based zoning codes that a lot of times we use in conjunction with a complete neighborhood plan. Very oftentimes used in conjunction with downtown general zoning, very similar to that, but a lot of differences as well. I know that neighborhood services was one of the zoning types recommended at the intersection of Razorback and Cleveland that the council did not approve. Well, that didn't end up getting to the council, but it was one thing that was suggested. Because it really isn't just neighborhood, it does incorporate business and that commercial aspect. And so the discussion, I guess, revolving around neighborhood services and is it appropriate in the area is, do we have the infrastructure to support that? Because if this is a zoning decision and not a building decision, then we have to look at what's already there in terms of infrastructure. Can we support the potential businesses that could be built in neighborhood services with the roads that's already there and with the traffic that's already there. So just a clarification on that, that neighborhood services is generally something that's combined with full neighborhood plans. So to answer your question, I really don't have an answer for how many homes could go there, but John, you've had your hand up.
I would like to add a comment to help with the numbers a little bit. I've been working out a lot of the numbers. They have offered a bill of assurance that limits it to 730 total units. So regardless of what goes in, it's limited to a max of 730. Assuming it's built to that max, using Department of Transportation data, that'd be 1,424 vehicles on that space. And as far as traffic numbers go, using that same number you're talking about, those vehicles make about almost 23,000 trips a day.
23,000 a day?
Yeah, total, the vehicles. That's the data we're going to find. There's actually Mr. Jarrett's data that showed that 10 trips a day per vehicle.
Well, we're obviously going to get into disputes again about traffic counts and whatnot, so I refer back to letting the city come up with those numbers.
And again, I'll ask about that. Generally, the city doesn't do those kinds of studies for rezoning. Development proposals, they do those type studies, but
Well, I guess
I don't know if they will or not, because we can only ask the question. We can't
Right.
have them do it.
Well, I guess the question is then, there are two different perceptions, a lot of different perceptions about the numbers, and it's which numbers you choose to believe, I suppose. I think we all know that developers are pretty notoriously evil and untrustworthy, so it's probably not, our numbers are probably not going to be accepted very readily. That's why we would suggest that maybe a city representative who is honest and trustworthy might come up with those numbers.
Well, I think when you come to the council, you'll see that some people will agree with different perspectives. I guess that's why there's 8 of us.
And I've offered sources for all of my numbers, though, including the crime data that we shared.
I know that when it comes to crime information, I know the chief of police will be happy to share any of that information, because he did have a different number, I remember, at the city council meeting. That's all public, so.
Alan,
Beverly?
has there been a traffic study done by the development? Has somebody done a traffic study? I know that's often submitted along with a rezoning request, and didn't know whether, like existing numbers.
The one that was discussed at the city council meeting, and Kim, you could probably speak to this a little bit more, but it was done by the Arkansas Highway Transportation Department, and I think it was a study that was looking at some of the main highways. I'm not sure that they had actually done a study on Dean Solomon in the last...
Right, there's not an actual study. The numbers that Hugh was using were basically off of the Arkansas State Highway Department website that shows the traffic counts on various streets around Fayetteville. And he was making a comparison of 2-lane open ditch streets in Fayetteville, existing streets and the existing traffic that are on those streets. We'd be happy to provide a traffic study. There's not one required for rezoning. Typically, there again, you'd see that in a PZD type application or we could certainly have one done.
That's just not something we can require, obviously. It's something you could offer, but not something we could ask you to do. But we would take it. Scott?
I think there was a traffic study a few years ago in relation to the property to the west and some master street plan changes. I spotted it a few months ago, but I went back looking for it.
Crystal Springs Phase 4?
May have been.
And that didn't measure how the traffic would enter onto Highway 112. And that's really one of the large discussion points here is, you know, the traffic flow going north and to the freeway, because what we've seen and what I've heard from a lot of people, and having lived in the area for so long, is that we see so much traffic going north onto 112 to get to the other entrance of the freeway, which is in Lowell. So that's one of the discussion points.
So about the Taft Street improvements you said developers are often required to do, that for this wouldn't get all the way down to the north end of Dean Solomon. I'm probably the outlier in the room who looks at a development like this close to the interstate, thinks it makes a lot of sense. But I see a lot of all the concerns that the neighbors raise. Is there any thought of what would it take for the city to invest the infrastructure improvements to make something like this feasible? How far out of the master plan is that?
Well, if you look at what would be required for major improvements, until the flyover was done, actually Ward 4 had gotten the largest chunk of money from the Transportation Bond Program, and that was the improvement to Mount Comfort Road. And I cannot remember the exact dollar figure right now, but it was the large amount that had been spent anywhere in the city of Fayetteville. So it would be substantial, given that the area that would be improved would be just as probably as large as that.
The north intersection cannot be improved by the city of Fayetteville either because it's a state highway.
Right.
So there couldn't be an improvement there.
It would require their permission, at least.
I do want to apologize. You were wrong. I was wrong on that number. I looked at the wrong one. The number I gave a minute ago was considering the traffic that's already there as well. It'd be about 14,000 trips based on the total amount. That was Mr. Jarrett's number as well. Sorry about that.
Yes, Robert?
Robert Rhodes, I represent the 3 or 4 of the landowners, or I'm sorry, the Property Owners Association. The applicant filed, I think, literally the evening of the meeting, the last city council meeting, this bill of assurance, I think, for 730 cap. Have you all pulled that back? Is that still in place?
That would still be in place.
Okay. Will you file another one before the meeting tomorrow? Is there anything else you're going to?
Any others? No, sir. We don't plan it.
Thank you.
As an aside, that number answered my question.
Okay. Any other general questions, comments, concerns, clarifications that you need or want? Wow, I thought we'd have a lot more than that. Philip?
I have one. Being the location of the proposed apartment building, what percentage do you anticipate being students based on your current rental rate, and what that leaves a percentage that will actually be residents, if you will, renters for sure? Because I think that's going to determine where that traffic flow is going to go. So if it's students, and you're basically going to be dropping them into the Dean Solomon and then on to Porter, right?
I would expect students to go to Porter and then across the interstate to school there. They're by the farms.
Yeah, they don't. They cut through my neighborhood and go up Cleveland. But so that's the reason for my question is you got an additional, you got 742 units, right? Is it 2,300 residents? Is it 3,000 residents? How many people are you at? How many bedrooms are you actually planning on, I guess?
Are you talking about students or just in general?
Just in general.
Okay. In the 730 number, 480 of those would be apartments, multifamily, and so the other 250 would be single-family residents. I don't have any numbers to support this. I would not expect a whole lot of the single-family residents to be students.
Right.
I would think one would assume that. In our last meeting, Hugh had some numbers based on the number of students that we have in Lindsay Apartments, and a lot of it depends on location.
Right.
For instance, at Southern View there by Raymond Junior High, it's like 95% of our students. The Vantage Square apartments there by the mall are about 6% students. We believe that that we probably wouldn't see more than 40% students of the at this particular location, just based on its distance from the school. So, you know, 480 units. That's I'd have to run the math on it, but that's 480, and it's going to be about 1,000 bedrooms. So whatever that equates to people.
Thank you.
One quick question. So 480 apartments and 200 in single-family units, but you mentioned 250, but you meant, so, but Lindsay generally doesn't do single-family residences, right?
Right.
Is that what?
We've just, the way we came up with that number is we have looked at, studied some different, and talked with some different developers about how that NS and NC property could and probably will be developed, and feel like that 250 single-family dwelling number is actually more than what would be market-driven to be built there, so that's why we feel comfortable with that bill of assurance.
Okay, so it'd be more of a sell that land after it's rezoned?
Yes.
Okay. That's just one thing. I always look for the reason for a rezoning before.
Will that bill of assurance transfer to that single-family sale? I mean, if you sell the property off, does that transfer over that can only be allowed for single-family?
Yes,
in the
sir.
zoning prospect of it?
Yes.
It lasts as long as the city council leaves it in place. It can always be removed by the council. My other question was, we didn't get to go into it a lot. There were a lot of questions left. At the presentation, you mentioned that 99.61% of apartments in Fayetteville were full. You had said that there was some confusion over some of his presentation, but I know that doesn't take into account apartments with less than 50 units, which there are a lot of in Fayetteville.
Well, Hugh's comment was Lindsay Apartments.
That was Lindsay only, okay.
Yes, that 99% number was Lindsay Apartments in Fayetteville, not all apartments in Fayetteville. We certainly don't have that information.
Okay. Well, I know that the University of Economics has published that, but they don't take into account apartment complexes with less than 50. So.
Right. Yeah, so this is just the Lindsay Apartments, and that's how we feel like, that's how we would judge demand. It's just based on our own information.
Okay. Well, I know that besides Lindsay Apartments, there's a lot of new ones that have gone up. So I don't know what the percentage would be in Fayetteville. It just sounded at the meeting like they were talking in generalities and not just Lindsay.
No,
So
yeah.
that's a clarification. Several people asked me to.
I think it just came out in the latest deal, I think last week.
Kathy Deck's
Kathy
report?
Deck just did one last week, and so that should be the latest number, and it was in the 98-99%. But I can get it. and I can
She doesn't include ones with less than 50 units,
Right.
which a lot of Fayetteville is, with Fayetteville being over 50% rental. A lot of duplexes, a lot of 10, 12, 15, 20 units per apartment. So there's just, I think that leaves out a lot of information. So I don't really know about the demand aspect of the argument that was presented, but you know, maybe more information can be found out. Yes, well, I'm looking through my notes.
I have a lot I want to say, but I'm not going to say it.
Come on.
No.
Okay.
You want to talk about the price of tea in China?
No.
You have a question at the back, Alan.
Yeah. Sorry.
You talked at the beginning that before this would be developed, you would have to sell off the land that you're not going to build, that will have homes built on it before you start the apartments. Is that still the same process, or are you going to start the apartments if they get approved, whether the land sells or not?
Well, first of all, the land, the single-family land or the NCNS land, whatever, that does not have to develop before the Lindsay apartment develops.
You told us to begin with, when we came to, started all of this way back when, that the first thing that you all were going to do would be to sell off the land that was going to have homes, single-family homes built on it, and the apartments would not be built for 4 to 5 years. Is that still, this is what I'm asking?
Yes, ma'am, that's still true, but we hope to sell the property. We may find ourselves in Mr.
Well,
Cavish's shoes.
you said
and not be able
also,
to.
if you didn't get the apartments approved, that you all would not be doing the project.
That's right. If the apartments are not approved, then Mr. Cavish has the problem.
Basically, you're saying the sale's contingent upon the rezoning.
Right.
Okay, yeah. Sorry about missing your question. Annette, anybody else? Okay. Well, I know tomorrow night we will have a probably lively debate on the issue.
You may want to tell everybody where the meeting is.
That's true. The meeting is not going to be in City Hall tomorrow. It's going to be at the Fayetteville boardroom for the public schools. I will look that address up in just a moment.
Stone Street, Old Stone Street,
Yeah.
which is now called Bulldog Avenue.
I can't keep up with the names they're changing the streets to there. But that is close to, what is that now, Clinton Drive?
No.
There are a lot that's changed. It's right across.
It's the Roy Adams Leadership Center School Boardroom, 1000 West Bulldog Avenue, formerly Stone Street.
That's it. So, meetings at the same time as it normally would be, 5:30. Seating will be somewhat more limited than the city council chambers, so if you want to come and speak, of course, everyone will get their turn to speak. They'll just probably have to cycle people through the room, but you might
Will this
want
be
to come
another
early.
public hearing?
Tomorrow night, city council meeting. Yeah, it'll be back, it's still on the agenda. It'll be on the second reading, so.
How many readings are there?
There's
3.
always 3 readings. We can always table it for any amount of time that we want. But if we don't table it, it automatically moves to the next reading. And then we can always move through all 3 readings in one night, but on contentious or divided issues, we generally don't. Just so that everybody gets a chance to have their opinions evaluated.
State law requires 3 readings, and the idea is you got 2 weeks between each reading, so people have time to discuss it, tell their friends and neighbors, get the word out. These are things that are going to affect you, how you live, what you throw away, where you can drive your car, what you can do with your own property. So if you have an opinion, we want you to be able to come and voice that opinion. And when things are controversial sometimes, we'll run all 3 readings in one night, so it doesn't give you a chance to come voice your opinion. Isn't that wonderful democracy?
I do have a question.
Sure.
How many citizens have you both heard from in favor of this?
One.
Versus against?
I've heard from 2 people in favor of it, and I can't tell you how many people against. So there's a lot.
So you've heard from 1 and you've heard from 2.
I've heard from 2.
Ron, you married?
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry, Ron, that makes 3. Okay. All right, if there are no other questions, we appreciate y'all coming, be available for questions.
Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely. Okay, talk a little bit about the special event ordinance next. I know that a local group of citizens, Tom's with us tonight, Mr. Arcega's with us tonight, have worked with Alderwoman Marsh, and they've developed an ordinance that would change the way special events that last 3 or more days are permitted in the city of Fayetteville when streets are closed. Currently, right now, it's an administrative process. It goes through the mayor's office, and the mayor's able to administratively approve that. The proposal on the table would make it to where if anytime the streets are closed for 3 or more days in a row, that has to go to the city council and allow for a public comment period, then for approval. I've heard all different types of perspectives on this. Some perspectives are focused only on Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue. Some perspectives are not focused at all on that. some are vehemently opposed to this ordinance, and some are very in favor of it. So I'm sure that tomorrow night, when this is on its second reading, we will again have a very, very lively debate on that. But I'm going to go ahead and offer the chance for Tom or
I'm gonna defer to Kerry. I live in the 4th Ward, Pratt Drive, and work, have an office at 211 Block. I've been working on this for 4 years, and Alan pretty much succinctly stated it. Kerry has been taking the brunt of the public comments, so I'm gonna ask him to come up and discuss it with y'all.
I'm gonna sit down because I'm tired.
I don't blame you.
It's been a long day. The event, the ordinance is quite simple, on the surface. It asks that there be, citizen input and city council approval for a large-scale event. The idea is that when the city is going to give away, public property for a big event that affects the whole town, that there should be citizen input and that the city council approve of it. That's the simple version of it. I would say I know that when a zone, when a lot goes to be rezoned, citizen input's available to the neighbors. And it may only affect, 5 people in the neighborhood. So a large-scale event like this can affect the entire city. So I just think it's a fair ordinance to get, information out that people have about the event, how it affects them, so that maybe some of the issues that concern people can be mitigated. So, contrary to what is out there in public, I did not start this to get rid of bike blues and barbecue. That was not my goal. Okay. Obviously, Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue informed my decision. But where this came from for me, this being a downtown businessman, and it was after Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue. And I've been in business for 24 years. So I've been through every Bike, Blues, and Barbecue, so I really know what to expect. So nothing surprised me. But what I started thinking about was on that Monday after, I had a lot of people coming in and saying, "Oh, well, that was crazy, Bike, Blues, and Barbecue, And they may not like it, but they're in favor of it because it helps small businesses like me. And I always say, well, it doesn't help me. My business goes down 60%. I have to lay off people. So, and there's a common belief out there that it helps a lot in the downtown. It only, hurts a few. But I believe, and I know, I own a coffee shop, I talk to all the people, it really helps a few and hurt most of the people down there. I just think that information should be available for us to tell our city council people. Now, they can still have it. It may be that the overwhelming good of the event offsets that. I don't know. But I do know I'd like to have my say. And I didn't want to have another event come to Fayetteville and grow like Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue did, with the idea that it's helping downtown businesses when it's not. So, to me, it's just a way to get good information out. I think really what we ought to do, and I talked to Steve Clark today from the Chamber of Commerce. I think we should have a comprehensive economic study about how it affects Fayetteville specifically. They're very detailed. How do people downtown do it? How do people up and down the north and south corridor of College Avenue? Because I've also talked to those people, and those people are also negatively affected, which makes sense because a lot of people, of course, leave town for this event, and a lot of people who stay in town don't want to go out because of the traffic. So these are all things that should be considered on any future event when we go to make a decision, rather than it just being a permitting process where you go through the process and you check off all the blocks and then you get your permit. Anything that affects town this much should have citizen input. I think it's a really. When I was talking to my grandson just yesterday, he heard I was involved with something controversial, so I was trying to explain what it was, citizen input, and the other side, the permitting processes and that. He literally he looked at me and said, "Grandpa, this is America. That shouldn't be controversial, And I don't think it should. It's just like, let's let the citizen have a say in it." Yes.
How many current festivals we have in Fayetteville there are 3 days or greater?
From what I understand, and I asked people in the city government about that, there's, and Tom, you can help me with this, there's a Joe Martin bike race, there's the Roots Festival. Go ahead.
Well, we thought Lights of the Ozark was
Right,
also
that's
possible,
right.
but it's got a special ordinance that already protects it. There are 3 events that are permanently protected by city ordinance, and our proposed ordinance, or the proposed ordinance, would not affect them because they've already been covered by those provisions. Let me get back over here and try to find it real quick. I should have had it out.
But there's only about 3 or 4.
Fayetteville
But-
Farmers
but-
Market's probably one
Well,
of
The
the...
farmer's market is protected,
Right.
yes, and First Thursday, that's the third one.
Right.
But, listen to what Kerry said, it's not just what's here, it's what could come. If you have, we have, a major permit is only required if there's certain street closings and so forth, under the current rules. And the current permitting process is a good process, they do a good job on the administrative side of it. But you can grow from an event that doesn't become a major event to one that does. And what we're saying is, even when you grow to be a major event, you're still not going to have to come before city council unless you close streets or the WAC parking lot, or West parking lot they call it, for more than 2 days, i.e. 3 or more. So a little festival will grow. Bike Exclusive Barbecue grew from smaller to much larger. Anything that's going to grow, the tipping point under our proposal is closing for 3 days or more. So as some other festival grows, it should come before city council at some point, is what we're saying. Any new festival that comes in the future, question is it fit for Fayetteville? Is it good for Fayetteville? Is it something we want to embrace? Well, you know, having it come before city council at an appropriate time gives citizens an opportunity to say, you know, that's a great festival, we need to support that and grow it. Or here's things that need to be considered. That's the point.
Well, Tom and Kerry, we need to point out, just like what's happening right now, we don't have to come before the city council to inform or have a discussion about how citizens feel about a certain item. We can call a public meeting anytime you want to and reserve a room, this room, and have citizens come and express their opinion.
But John, what's the point if you play no role in that decision?
You can vote me out of office if I turn a blind eye to your proposal. I'd want to know what citizens think
You wouldn't know
about.
if you're turning a blind eye. You have no dog in the fight, so to speak. You cannot be for, there's no...
I have been a downtown businessman for 35 years, Mr. Arcega.
Well, and so have I. But I'm
No, you said 24 a while ago.
What I'm saying, John, it doesn't matter. I mean, we're talking to a governing body here that plays no role in that decision. When a citizen comes before to rezone a lot, they're talking to people who play a role in the decision.
Well, our mayor
So
plays a role in that decision. I'm sure he has an open door policy. You can talk to him most any day.
You could, John, but it's not easy for the average citizen to go knock on the mayor's door and know how to do it, and have the moxie to walk in there and get it done.
So
You
it's
guys-
easier for him to show up in front of the city council
Yes,
meeting?
because
and have
it's at
fanfare?
night, it's publicized, you 8 guys are our representatives, and we would like the opportunity to speak to you about these things, rather than having, on an individual basis, to go have to find the mayor and get on his schedule and be able to do that.
And not only that,
Well-
John, I mean, it's the way, from what I understand, you can correct me in terms of the way our government is set up with the city council and mayor. It's the city council that manifests the will of the people, if you will. We elect you, and, you know, and then you hear us, and we have input. The mayor's job is to carry out that mandate that you express, you know, that you tell him to do. So that's why I think the city council is the right place for this to be discussed. Is that compelling, John?
It's not terribly compelling when you look at the practical outcome of it, Kerry.
Oh, well, what's that?
Initially, I told Kerry, and we've had this discussion before, and this is just my take on it. When you say more public input, what can be wrong with that? That sounds good to me. But my experience on the city council over the last 12 months tells me the people who come to speak about this issue will be the ones hurt by it. Nobody who's benefited from it will come except maybe a couple of people from Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue, like we had at last council meeting. but the public doesn't get real agitated about this. Only the people who perceive they're being hurt. But thousands of people are being benefited. When you look at the sales tax dollars that come into our city coffers from that event, when you look at the hotel occupancy rate that goes up, when you look at the restaurants that gain. I mean, one example that I think it was you, Carrie, that used was some lady on Block Street has a barber shop. Well, she's complaining that she doesn't get any business. Well, I prepare tax returns for a living. Guess what? I don't get any business from Bikes, Blues Barbecue either. I don't expect to get any business from Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue. I don't think a barber shop should expect that either. You have to sell something the public is buying. And if nobody's buying what you're selling, who needs to change, the public or you?
Well, here's the problem is, I've heard that argument, that you're in business, Carrie, you need to adapt to market forces. Okay? What I would say is this, well, here's a market force that's getting property from the city, our property, right, citizens' property, and giving it to an event promoter, organizer, that may be hurting a lot of people in the downtown area. Shouldn't we be able to have a place to talk about that? And when I talked to John, and John had a long conversation with him, I mean, there is a common misconception out there, and you were surprised when you found out.
I agree.
Oh, you mean the people on Block Street don't do well? Well, it's not just the people on Block Street. And that's all I'm trying to say. If there is a public forum, we can get better economic information to make informed decisions.
But we can give you a public forum without coming before the city council. Our city council meetings are long already.
So, let me say this.
When you said, John, I didn't hear that.
I said, we can give you a forum to express your viewpoint, and we can probably have a lot of city council people present. But I'm just not sure I want another agenda item on the city council agenda.
Well, sorry, ran for office.
Okay.
Yes, I know.
Let me
We have a
respond to one
question.
thing you said. Oh.
So we have a question here, and then we have Philip, and we'll come back to you.
Okay.
Well, I don't want to mislead it. It's not as much a question, maybe just to share some information if I could. My name is Kim Hughes. I'm with Fayetteville A&P Commission. And I think you had asked the question about an economic impact study. You do know that there has been one, right? Have you
And
taken
I've
one?
talked to her, yes.
Okay. Well, we have that available if you want to see it. I just, I know it's difficult, and I'm going to ask some questions so you can help me along.
Sure.
Obviously, the economic impact is huge, not just from an occupancy at the hotels or the restaurants. And I do know one of the conversations we had with some of the businesses on the square was Trick or Treat on the Square. It was a little bit of challenge this year because it was happened to be a homecoming football weekend. So, some of the businesses were going to maybe not get the business they might normally get, right? And one of the questions that we have proposed to them, well, how can we help? Where is it that we need to move? What is it that we need to do? And so while that's a small free event, there's always going to be some sort of impact. So I will tell you, as an outsider coming in to Fayetteville, because obviously you said I've been downtown 25 years and I don't have that experience. One thing that I always wonder when I looked at Fayetteville when I came here, I was blown away by the fact that the amount of money that does come into the city coffers for Bikes and Blues. I had a conversation with some of those folks at the Parks Department. They're like, I don't know, that's never going to happen, because the Bikes and Blues has a little bit of an image problem, right, with the local folks. And half of everything that comes into the coffers for the tax for food and hotel motel goes to the city to maintain our parks. So, for me, it's like a lot of folks that are riding on those trails and walking on those trails need to realize that a lot of that money is Bikes and Blues. And one of the conversations I had with the the publisher of AY Magazine this week was very much similar to this and about controversy. There was a town in New Mexico that had an event for years, and they finally got tired of it. It had been there for 20 years, and they had like this rider that it cost them so little, it was under $10,000 to bring the event to town, and the citizens, it just caused too much trouble. So they ran them off. Well, so they went out to Arizona and started doing a very successful event in Phoenix. Well, it didn't take but about a year for the coffers and the businesses to see the impact. And when they went back to get it, the price tag on it was astronomical, but they paid the price tag to get it back. And so that to say, it doesn't matter, I think, what event it is, if it's downtown or uptown. We for Lights of the Ozark, we've had citizens come to us and go, hey,
we want a piece of the pie in Midtown. What we want you to do is start the parade at the mall and bring it downtown, or vice versa. We're like, well, that's a good idea. You know, these are kids in the parade, there's main highways, so there's logistical issues involved. So there's some events that can't grow from one side of the city of Fayetteville to the other. And I say all those things to say, I understand your reservations, and my question was given a little bit of my background and understanding events. I mean, I've worked in huge cities that shut down massive streets, and there's always somebody that's going to pay the price, right? Is it good, is it bad? I don't know. But what if the permit were written differently? Or, I guess I'm offering up, is there a possibility that maybe that it's not something that comes before the city council, and maybe it's something that changes from what it is now, but is there maybe an alternative somewhere in the middle that it came? Because I don't know, I mean, as an A&P person, I can't imagine that people are going to knock our doors down to do 3-day events. And the thing about Bikes and Blues, it's already moving north. And so one of the conversations that we have, and this is kind of the elbow punch, is, yeah, you go ahead and get rid of the part that's bringing in the dollars, and they'll move to the next city. Because we have 2 cities right up the street that will welcome them with open arms, because they only get kind of the peripheral of the visitation from the food and the hotel stays. But what's going to happen is, if it moves north, we're going to continue to get the traffic. We just won't get the money part. So what we'll lose the treasure part, and we'll gain the coins that are falling out of the pockets as they go up north. And so I'm not sitting here as a proponent, or either way, I'm sitting in the middle saying, I do believe you're correct. There has to be a good way to please the businesses and the residents, as well as to continue to foster an event that we know brings quite a bit of change for the economy here. And I know I've been kind of long, but I ask all of that to say, is there middle ground? Is there anywhere we can go with the permitting that is not to bring it before city council, just to update it? And I'm going to throw one more thing. When I came here, one of the things we're focusing on now is film, so please don't anybody come after me for that, but that we don't currently have a permit in place. And I came from places where we had pretty strict permits in place if somebody comes to do filming in the city. So with that being said, I have said hour-long workshops helping with permitting to make sure that everybody's served. And I know it won't create the solution for Bikes and Blues, but would it be an alternative? That's my question.
Well, in terms of where in the permitting process this would go, we're going to be talking about having, I guess his name's Peter, the guy who deals with the permitting process for the city, who is not an elected official, who's working, just hired to be making huge decisions on what Bikes and Barbecue could or could not do. It's just not fair to put that on him. This is something that should be, since it's a major event. The permitting process, by the way, is very, very good. I have no problem with the permitting process. It doesn't do away with the permitting process. It just allows, there's no place in that process where you can get economic data, And that's you mentioned the economic study done. It was a broad study that just talks about the entire region, how much money it brought into the region, but it didn't talk about how much money leaves, like with all the vendors that come in, And there is no study out there that talks about how much the taxes go up, because HMR taxes, that's no longer FOI-able. And, I've talked
on the restaurant side, yeah.
Right, so really don't know. It would be good to know, and I think we should know.
Well, we can give you the restaurant, we can give you the total for the month.
Right.
Correct, collected just the restaurant, and the
Right.
total just collected per hotel, just not each individual restaurant.
And let me just say, I can't disagree with what you're saying, but this ordinance does not mean Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue moves to the north. It may mean other things, when you hear, I've been talking to a gentleman on the police force. He was on the police force, he retired 22 years, he's been through, 16 Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue. He has all sorts of ideas of ways to make it, to make some changes to it. And he'll be there tomorrow. I hope. He said he would. Sometimes people say they will and they don't show up. Speaking in public can be kind of intimidating, but if he's there, I think we'll look at some of the things he would like it city. And those things right now, they can't talk to the city council about them, so, it doesn't matter. That's all I'm saying. Well, let's be talking to the people that have let's give the power rather than, to the city council to make some changes. If they deem it valuable,
Terry.
no changes have to be made.
If you knew, if we passed this ordinance, just like you want us to, if we put it in place and you knew that would send Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue to Rogers or Springdale, would you still be in favor of it?
We don't know that.
If we knew that, that's a condition, what would be your position then?
If we knew that, well, I would assume that's the will of the people of Fayetteville. Then I would say whether I agree with it or not, if the will, let the will be manifested, right?
So you'd still be in favor of your ordinance?
If it goes, well, yeah, if that's what the people of Fayetteville want. It could go to Springdale or Rogers right now without the will,
Ken Martin stood in our city council meeting last go-around, and he named Rogers and Springdale as they get periodic offers from them to move the festival up there. Ken also pointed out to us that that the organization pays the city of Fayetteville something like $80,000 each event to help defray the cost of the extra police and fire protection that we have. He also made the point that if we move the festival to Springdale or Rogers, the bikers will still come and congregate on Dixon Street. We'll still have the same police overtime, the same fire overtime expenses that we have. We just won't be getting the $80,000 from the organization anymore. They'll be paying it to Springdale.
That's his statement. It may not be totally accurate.
That was his statement. I can believe that Springdale would love to have this festival.
That's not the argument. The question is, if it goes north, are we in as dire circumstances as Lawyer Morton tried to point out?
I don't know that we're in dire circumstances, but I'd say we'd be down $80,000.
No, I don't think you know the whole story.
Well, I can tell you,
John,
I asked for that, no, I'm sorry.
I want to bring the conversation back a little bit, because I think we're getting off topic and we're running a little short on time, but...
We're way over time.
So, this ordinance won't just affect Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue. It'll affect anything in Fayetteville, any festival in Fayetteville. So, I mean, if we want a Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue ordinance, then we just need to write a Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue ordinance, and then we can talk about that all night. But this is a discussion on whether or not the city council should hear any application for a permit for 3 days or more on city streets, or if the mayor in his capacity is capable enough to do that himself. Someone said earlier that, it might have been you, Carrie, I'm not sure, that it's not fair to put that on Peter, but, well, we pay him to do it. So, I don't know that argument gets me there. And I'm not sure how I'm going to vote tomorrow, because I've had so many constituents on both sides of this.
I have a comment right along these lines.
Okay. But, I just want to throw a few things out there before we hear some more comments, because, there's this way it's been presented to us to bring it to the council for each one, and I don't mind listening to them. It's another agenda item, that's why y'all elected me. But I've heard that could we possibly have a supermajority of the council members required to pass or override the mayor's decision? Or could we add a comment period required at a city council meeting for a major event permit and still allow the mayor to make that decision? And I've also heard, what was the other one? Oh, there was another one. There was a lot of ideas that have been thrown out there, but one thing that hit me in an email today was, does this make Fayetteville harder to deal with in the minds and perception of people? I don't know the answer to that question, but that's a comment that the city council gets incessantly. So I just want, maybe tomorrow night when someone speaks, you can address that, because one of the things we hear all the time is that the city council makes it hard for businesses to do business in the city. I don't want that reputation to continue. So maybe if y'all could address that tomorrow, because seriously, now I'm on the fence on this. At the beginning when this was coming up, I said, sure, I like public comment, that sounds great. And quite frankly, I would enjoy hearing public comment on lots of things. But the real question at hand is the mayor's process that he has in place and what the city council from years ago directed the mayor to do, working or not working. So I think that's what we have to consider and kind of move the discussion away from Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue. We definitely don't want to send that message to that organization that we don't want them, unless this passes and it comes to the council and then that event ordinance is voted on. But at this time, we just really need to focus on the ordinance, because we're going to be hearing a lot of comments on a lot of different event
And
applications.
that's a good point, and I have to agree with you. I mean, look at the ordinance as it is, and if you're opposed to it, because people who generally come up and speak against the ordinance, they're pro-bikes, blues, and barbecue. And that's fine. I mean, I had people who signed that petition who were pro-bikes, blues, and barbecue, but they thought there should be citizen input. In fact, several of them thought they already thought that the city council approved of it. So, look at the ordinance. Don't talk about bikes, blues, and barbecue, is what you're saying.
Right.
And what's wrong with it? You know, why shouldn't a major event have citizen input? Like I said, we have citizen input when we rezone a lot. We ask for city council approval on something that minor. You know, if there's a $20,000 contract that's going to go up to the city, you know, there's city council approval, you know, for that. I mean, so I don't see it's a very democratic process.
But Kerry, we already talked about, we have 3 events, the Farmers Market, Lights of the Ozarks, and the other one, the Roots Festival,
First Thursday in the Roots.
that don't have public comment, that they're written in. If
The
this
city
really,
council approved them.
if this is really not about Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue, fine. Let's write into the ordinance, let's amend it, say Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue is exempt from this ordinance.
Well, let's have the city council have a talk about that.
We're doing that tomorrow night.
I mean, you know, to be exempt. I mean, that's an interesting, you know, I mean,
Sure.
that was before the city council, there was citizen input, and surely you could say, I don't think Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue ever has to be permitted again, they're grandfathered in forever, if that's what the city council wants to do. That would be a very bad decision, because...
Well, it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be forever, it'd be until the city council changed their mind.
No, well, usually even legacy events only are 3 years, and you got to come back again, you know.
Okay, I've got 2 people who have had their hand up. Okay, one person now, Bill.
From a management point of view, what this proposed ordinance would do is require every year a rehashing of, and let's use Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue as an example. There is what has become a tradition now. It happens every year, you can count on it. It has grown to where it is today. So there's a big question about it today. And as proposed, this ordinance would require that every year, as part of the process, the city council reconsider. Now, from a management point of view, that does not make sense. You've already cited several events that are permanently approved. So I would suggest, at a minimum, if you consider this ordinance, consider a standing approval by the city council, saying, okay, we've had the big thing about this particular event. We have decided we like this particular event. Let's leave standing approval, subject to challenge, of course, as you said, John.
Sure.
The city council can reverse itself at a future date. And in the absence of that reversal, it stands.
Good idea, good idea.
Like what you're saying, though, is let's get city council input at least for the first time.
Well, I didn't say that. There was an if in there.
Okay.
See?
I think that's
I do not necessarily believe that this needs to be brought before the city council. But if it does come before the city council, I think city council ought to make a standing decision on it as a matter of policy.
And Bill, that brings me back to one of the ideas that I did receive, was that if the mayor did approve an event permit, that there would be a week period that any city council member could appeal that permit to the entire city council.
Sure.
And that may be a more streamlined process than all of them coming, because there may be no discussion or complaints or input from any citizen on, like, the Joe Martin stage race. So, you know, maybe that is something, I am getting to the point where I'm thinking that maybe an amendment somewhat similar to that could be useful. I don't know.
You better make that amendment, Alderman Long. Mine aren't very successful.
No, they're not. I'm just kidding.
You know,
Philip, sorry.
One thing that we hadn't
Wendell,
talked about,
you're
that Terry brought up, was future events. And I can see that the impact of future events, if we've already got the calendar full of festivals, that future events might take up another 3-day weekend. I can see where that would be a great concern, because all of a sudden you've got, you know, you got 3 events now you've got 4, then you got 5, then all of a sudden all your weekend business is gone, because nobody can get downtown. So I mean, I see where the future events is probably more important than current events.
But I would think that the mayor and his administration, Peter in this case, the administrator on point, has to take that into account when he gets a new offer to have a festival. He's looking to see how many weekends are we encumbering already. You know, what's this going to do politically to my mayor? What's this going to do to our city economically? He's got to consider that.
Do you think Peter should have the right to say, I'm not going to cut bikes?
Jeremy Pate has the right to shut down any building project in town.
Well, and I'll clarify that just a little bit. Any of our staff members who make a decision, the buck ultimately stops with the mayor when it comes. If it comes from the staff, you might as well consider it coming from the mayor, who's an elected official, because he's not going to let them make a decision he doesn't agree with. But I see.
And the mayor is held accountable.
But I'm sorry, Wendell, you've had your.
What I understand is that future events, would you be opposed to grandfathering White Blues and Barbecue? Don't touch that?
I would say, I have thought about the idea of making every 3-day event that we now have be a legacy event, which means for the next 3 years, they couldn't, you know, Tom, could you explain the legacy event?
Legacy event would be one that's been in existence for more than 3 years and approved for 3 years. You would then get an approval that's good for the next 3 years, and you wouldn't come back for reapproval for 3 years.
So that means event.
The idea of getting somebody a permanent pass is a little strong from our perspective. It's, you know, a longer period than one, maybe. But, you know, there should be an opportunity for re-review by our 8 elected representatives as opposed to one person mayor who's elected and opposed to an administrative person who is not elected.
And is the farmer's market a legacy event that reviewed every 3 years?
No, what the council's done in the past is given them a permanent pass.
They have a permanent pass?
Well, unless you repeal the ordinance.
And that was something the city council agreed upon.
Nothing's really permanent.
Well, no, it's not.
That's true.
You keep saying it's not permanent, but for a action to come forth on, let's take farmer's market. Let's say that somebody and some group wants to work on that. They're going to have to come convince the whole to come in and bring in a measure to repeal that ordinance or change it and so forth. That is a huge difference than having an item that comes up every year or every 3 years, depending on where this thing plays out.
We just
Where
did
there's
that.
published notice to come forth and say what they need to say and bring things to the attention of the council. It's a big difference between starting a movement and having an opportunity that is a normal part of the process.
And we did just do that in 2013. We had a huge discussion. It lasted about 2 months on changing the farmer's market process. I was a big part of that. Alderman Petty was a large part of that. So, I mean, it's done all the time. I would do it for anybody in this room that asked me to bring something forward. I can't say I'd vote for it or not, but always bring ideas forward when
So
asked.
what I'm saying though is, to me, the fair thing would be to put the routes, the Lights of the Ozark and all these into some new designation that they review them every 3 years. And so then that way it's fair, it's across the board, it's not just like Blues and Barbecue just singling out. And maybe at the same time present your economic impact, because I was not aware that half of the money from Blues and Barbecue goes to parks and maybe have a dollar figure, because all we ever see is, okay, 1 year they get $5,000 for charity and the next year they get 50, and you're not really seeing all the other impact that they make. So perhaps when they came up for review in 3 years, they had to present all of these statistics about what the impact was to the area.
And to clarify just a little bit, the HMR taxes that are collected, the city council's authorized an AMP commission for the city of Fayetteville. For right now, we've reauthorized them issuing debt so that we could keep an AMP for the current period, but, you know, when we collect that AMP money, the AMP gets half of that and the city of Fayetteville gets the other half. So that's kind of, you probably know that already, but.
But I'm just
for the
saying
listeners.
that, you know, perhaps that's something that needs to be addressed to the public more clearly, that instead of just saying, well, they pay sales tax, that's all it's not voluntary, but it's self-reporting. In other words, we don't have any oversight into whether or not our vendors are paying their sales tax or not.
I really like the idea of putting all the businesses using it in the same class. I don't think farmers markets should have a special pass in perpetuity until we change our mind. Put them all in a 3-year review process.
And I think then that way you're fair, and then people are not feeling like you're singling out bikes, blues, and barbecues.
Great idea.
I mean,
Joe, you've had your hand up for a long, I'm sorry, Susan, did I?
no, that's it.
All right.
That's all.
Sorry, that's a great idea, though, I appreciate it.
My name is Joe Kiklak. I'm a candidate for Justice of the Peace in District 11, which encompasses parts of Ward 4, 1, and 3 as far as I remember. And the City Parks and Recreation Department has made it a priority that if an event closes down a significant portion of the shared use trail, that event must designate some kind of non-profit source. As far as I understand, the proceeds of that event will go to, I know that Slide the City was affected in a similar way. And it sounds like the kind of discussion that we've had tonight has been mimicked, and I know it's been mimicked at council meetings, and that Bikes, Blues, and Barbecues and other Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue and other events have evolved over time. That in any form, this discourse is important, and that the businesses on Dixon Street and the businesses on Block and the College Corridor and around, especially in Ward 4, are the foundation of the city of Fayetteville. And for long-term success, it sounds like it's important that we must be able to have these discussions again at some frequency, because these kinds of ideas get lost in emails and in sidebar conversations. So when we have them all out in the public, it invites everyone to come and be educated, just like I wish more people did at our meeting this evening. Thank you.
Joe, what's your last name?
It's Kiklak.
Kiklak?
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Joe.
Share one more thing, and this is just to make sure that the impact is out there. And I know this is going to revert a little bit back to Bikes Blues. The perfect storm for an event is that it would grow to be a 3-day event, which is, it comes with pain to understand that. The State Department, Arkansas Department of Parks and Tourism, actually uses Bikes Blues and has now come to the point where it is a marketing tool for them, not just for this one. And I told them, you know, we are full. You know, the site, we're not closed, but we're full. So we can't grow the event and bring more people here during that week. But the beauty of it is that the state has gone that extra mile. They've added 4 motorcycle shows to what they pay for to go bring tourism, leisure shows. So outside the Bikes and Blues, they use that kind of as the thrust, the marketing thrust, to drive people, leisure cyclists, here at other times during the year. So I know it sounds like I'm a big fan. I'm a fan of an event that's successful. That's what I'm a fan of. I'm not a motorcyclist myself. I did see the event. I was here during the event. So I just say that I know any event is hard. Anytime you close streets, it's difficult. I know the police can tell you for sure that it's difficult, and you can't do it lightly. You know, you have to be serious about it. But I just want to just say, remember the economic impact, and that and I believe what you did here is true. I'm pretty sure Springdale would pay for it in a minute, and I believe that Bentonville would pay for it in a minute. I know there's other things, but just remember, this is such an economic driver, this event that grew into a 3-day event. It turned into something that even the State Department uses as a marketing tool. So I just want to say, well, you're right, there needs to be looked at. Just remember what can also happen. There can also be it goes away, right?
And I would say that, I guess it could go away because the mayor may not find the variance to it. All I'm saying is let's get the full story out there. I think I'm gonna come see you tomorrow because you slipped down the float from the last time I talked to you.
I've got a commitment, I was supposed to leave at 7. Folks, I love a good discussion though.
See ya.
Bye.
I mean, because I think an economic study needs to be done on the effect of Fed. What if it's true that this is an event that hurts most of the small businesses in Fed? What if that turns out to be true? What do we want to do with that information? Well, one of the things we may want to do with it is we should have another event like that. You know, let's think about that before we have another 3-day event that brings in so many outside vendors. We need better economic information to make a better decision. Because I know most people in Fayetteville think, boy, it helps all the local businesses. That statement is not true, okay? I mean, I can't prove it, but if there was an economic study done, I feel confident. I know in the downtown area, you would find out that probably 80% of the business, maybe even more, because a lot of them shut down. And there's also other consequences of that. Businesses shut down entirely, they close their doors. Restaurants and bars do that too. And you also have the people who work in those restaurants and bars who are not on the upper economic, scale. I mean, in losing a week's worth of work or 3 days or a weekend, it can be tough on. All I'm saying is let's think about that. Let's get the whole picture when we decide this. And I mean, like I said, I just think it's, I think in the long run, I'll tell you one quick story, okay? When I had the petition out at my store on Dixon Street, a gentleman came in from Austin. He was visiting here they were thinking about retiring here. And he read the petition. He says, boy, it's good that y'all are thinking about this now, because in Austin, you know, there's so many festivals and rallies, et cetera. There was no mechanism to kind of, they were just kind of like us. They were permitted and they were approved. There was no saying, oh, we have too many, whatever. He says it's kind of a maddening downtown scene now. A lot of the residents and businesses, you know, are resenting all the stuff always being closed down and their businesses being hurt, or the noise from the different events, you know. And so this gives us, and he's saying right now they're finally trying to start to deal with it. I think we can be proactive. We know we're heading there. We're down where people want to be, where events want to come. We should have a process that allows us to vet them, as opposed to just be permitted.
You know, y'all all made some great points. And, you know, I just want to throw something else out there for everyone to think about before tomorrow night, if you plan on talking tomorrow. And just because we passed this ordinance doesn't mean that any particular event in Fayetteville is going to be approved or denied. You know, the city council members change every 2 years sometimes. Hopefully we won't change this one this time, but we'll see. But that's one thing to consider, is that just because we pass this doesn't mean that an ordinance an event will not be held or will be held. Now, the other thing to consider is, you know, we've talked a lot about the impact of a large event on the community as a whole, and the impact of an event on the few people that live in the vicinity. You know, think about road work. That's the opposite side. Road work is very inconvenient for the people who live right where it's happening, but after it's over, well, the people who don't live in the vicinity but drive past it every day really do benefit. Now, that may not be the best analogy, but
the road work gets finished and doesn't come back every year.
Sometimes it moves. Sometimes it moves a block up the street. If you've seen in the way in Fayetteville, we have 100-year-old pipes, and you know we've seen that on Sang a lot. You know, the road work happens on one intersection, and the pipe breaks just up the street. So I mean, public good is something we have to consider too. I'm just throwing out those two contrasting opinions because one of the things I just said totally supports this, and one doesn't. I don't know. So I don't know how I'm going to vote tomorrow. I hope that
Can I ask you a question?
more perspective comes up.
Are you
I guess.
sure there's going to be a vote tomorrow?
I hope so.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I thought there
I think it's a
was
good time
one.
to get this passed
Okay.
because we've had a lot of conversation.
Okay.
I'll be voting to move it forward
Okay.
tomorrow night.
I was just wondering how that worked. Thanks.
You think they'll go to third reading tomorrow night then?
I'm going to try for that. I think it's a conversation that we need to wrap up. It's been going for a long time. I think a lot of people in the community know that this has been a conversation in the works and widely publicized, and with all the public comment I've been getting, I know a lot of people know about it, so.
I'd like to express one other opinion.
Sure.
It's a standing position, mine. I feel that, again, to use this particular event as an example, I think the people most directly affected should be given more weight. Their opinions should be given more weight than the opinions of those of us who live 2 miles away.
And I like that too.
I do
but
too.
But you know,
Having a one man, one vote.
But there's two. You know, I know the businesses on Block Street. Some are for, some are against. But the businesses on
There is not. You'll have trouble finding any for.
Right. And I know that
we went to the meeting of the Block Street Business Association, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
There was not a single person who was supportive of Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue as it affects their business. To a person, they all said this is the worst week of the year for us.
And you can compare and contrast that to Dixon Street, whereas only one business was for this ordinance change, and the rest of the businesses in the Dixon Street Business Association were against this ordinance change.
I want to point out.
So it's just contrasting, not a...
I have something I can say about that, but I know this is a bit long. But more than half of the people didn't vote that belonged to the Dixon Street Merchants Association. And I'll tell you why. I got up and I spoke what I thought was, giving my reasons for the ordinance. And you would have thought, I was told I should maybe get out of town. It was like, I was pretty much attacked, for doing this. You're not going to get up there, that's the example, so people were afraid to vote. Quite frankly, I'll tell you this, remember that less than half the people voted. There was also some people, the way it was voted was, you knew how everybody was voting. It was an email letter, and you knew how everybody was voting. They also said later that they had some votes that came in, that was a secret ballot. They emailed the guy, said, this is how we want to vote. They didn't count those because they wanted to have transparency. I'm just telling you, there was an intimidating factor there, okay? Joe Fennell at the meeting, I will say this, also made this comment. He said there were 17 votes in favor of it, and he said probably only 4 of them make money. That's what I'm saying. There is only a few people making money on this event in the downtown area, and it's hurting a lot, and people don't know that. All I want to do is get that information. Do it, you can say tough. It's so good for the rest of it. We're bringing in, whatever the money is, but at least have that information. Give me a place to talk to my representative who has a say in this so that I can get my story out. Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue has a lot of money to hire marketers to get their story out. The local businessmen and residents don't. We count on our government. We count on a public forum to be able to go and speak to them. And that's being denied us, in my view, for no really good reason. I don't know what the reason would be. You have to get up and say we don't think there should be citizen input, or the mayor should be the one. I shouldn't say there's no reason. I'm sure there are reasons, but I like to hear them so we can debate about that, as opposed to it brings in a lot of money for HMR tax. Well, how much and what are the real numbers on that? That could all be a part. That could all be a part of the discussion. And that's all I'm saying. Let's have transparency.
My only objection, and I want to repeat this because I think it's important.
Yes, sir.
My only objection is I don't think the city council should have to do this repeatedly. Have the discussion about a particular question, and then make that a matter of policy that stands until it's challenged.
And I'm going to, RG.
Yeah, I know we need to quit. I just wanted to say one thing. I think you made an important point a while ago about the decision on this ordinance doesn't mean Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue or any other festival are going to automatically go away. If Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue is important and meaningful and what have you, then the city council ought to step up and hear everybody's opinion and vote to keep it exactly the way it is. But I think having the city council involved is a good idea. The other thing I wanted to say is, with regard to whether it would disappear and go to Springdale or Rogers or whatever, I spend a lot of time in Springdale. I spend a lot of time with the mayor and the city council up there. And I can assure you, if this ordinance passes, it isn't automatic that the Springdale city government is gonna come down here and try to steal Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue away. I mean,
They don't have the bars we do.
well,
Hey,
well,
the bars don't even make money, that's a
Sorry to interrupt.
There'll be a great deal of debate and discussion and what have you about whether Springdale wants Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue to come to Springdale before that decision is made.
And I'll just, and one other thing I heard was that, people on business and the Dixon Street Business Association didn't vote. Well, it's election year. If you don't vote, you don't get to complain.
That's right.
That's my
Well, there
motto.
is
That's a
pretty
joke,
big
but-
intimidation factor, I'm sorry. You don't know what Kerry suffered at that meeting. He was strongly abused by a couple of people. And therefore, the people who are more reticent aren't gonna stand up and take that abuse. They may feel it in their heart, but they're not gonna stand up and take the
And
abuse.
the vote wasn't a secret ballot.
Yeah, I have a lot of people who will tell me to myself,
There's an intimidating factor there, okay?
And Alan.
I still stick to that.
Well, you can.
Please don't misinterpret what I said about giving more weight to the folks down there, because I included, as you just mentioned, you see, you talked an awful lot about the businesses, but you did mention the residents. I think the view of the residents who are affected directly is important also.
And it was an event as big as Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue. I think it's safe to say all the residents are affected. I mean, it's a
Oh,
huge,
well,
And I really felt like that the residents, you didn't get to hear from them tonight.
Right.
We were not really given the opportunity to say how it affects us. I mean, we
That's
live.
true. I kept that on the,
But I'm just saying that to me is very, I understand that you're losing money and on those days and all that, but as a resident who lives, I live on the north side of campus, and it's ridiculous. Just for that one event, even some of your own city council people leave town, that weekend because they don't, it's 3
It makes
o'clock in the
four.
morning. Yeah,
One of them.
Yeah, at 3 o'clock in the morning, you can still hear the motorcycles inside my house on Dixon Street, and I live on the north side of campus.
I don't say anymore.
But I'm
One more
just saying for
sentence.
that, for that thing, but I think to be fair, if you put all of the groups in the same,
Right.
and then when we do have some other group that comes, who knows what may
We
want to
have-
come here,
right.
then we have something in place that we all have input.
It would be silly to have an event be a legacy event in Fayetteville that never had citizen input. It's just kind of like a basic democratic principle to me. You ought to have them, decide what you want, let a representative decide, but give us a forum to speak our truths and our stories. I'm not saying anymore. Thank y'all very much.
Well, we have had a lot of good discussion. I'm still leaning towards supporting this ordinance because I've had so many people reach out to me to do that. I don't know how it'll end up because I will probably offer an amendment after some discussion tomorrow night. I don't think that in its current form this is a perfect ordinance after having had so much public input. But that's where I'm at right now. I feel that I owe everyone an explanation. You've sat through almost a 2-hour meeting. But, I'm sure that we'll figure something out tomorrow. It may not be in its
If you have
current
an amendment,
form.
is it voted then, or does it have to go to?
The amendment would be voted on at that
that?
time.
Understand the process.
So we'll see. If that happens, it may be another 2 weeks because people may want to consider that. But that's where we are. I appreciate everybody hanging out and hanging in there. We've had a long night, so. And thank you to the people who worked on this ordinance too, because I know it's been a lot of work. So y'all have a good night.